What's up, everybody? Welcome back after a little bit of hiatus. I got busy and I just didn't have a set time to do the Chalk Talks in my schedule, but they are now because you guys deserve them. So, starting with this new cycle, we're back on it. Now, I know this week is test week during the actual program, but since we're starting a new cycle next week, I wanted to drop this video as kind of a preface for what we're getting into. Some of you have ran this cycle before. It's retooled a bit. I changed some of the workouts that kind of stuck out last time, but the themes are still the same. Many of you, this is probably the first time you're doing this cycle, and to that, it's going to be a good one, right? It's going to be good in the fact that you're going to get a lot of adaptation out of this cycle. In terms of enjoyment, the jury is still out on that. I know those of you who ran this before had some strong feelings about some of the days, and that's kind of why I want to put this video together. I don't think I did a good enough job preparing you all for the cycle last time to give you kind of a heads up about the intentions of the workouts and the outcomes that we're looking for. So we're going to try and combat some of that here to kind of give everybody a better understanding of what we're getting into for the next 12 weeks, and then talk through a little bit of the higher, like 30,000 foot view of what this cycle is for. So if you've been kind of going through the life cycle of building the base, you've done phase one, right? Phase one was just a general conditioning template to kind of rise the tides of all ships or something like that, right? So to get all your energy systems at a functionally better place. From phase one, though, as you've seen, if you've been on the teams, we kind of transition to 12-week training blocks that focus on specific adaptations, kind of hone in on a specific energy system, kind of the nuances involved with it. And so if you're new to the team coming off of phase one, welcome. You'll find that some days maybe feel like they're missing compared to phase one, but the intention here in this cycle and all cycles is to hone in on a specific aspect of the systems, and it kind of builds upon itself. So if you hang out in the teams for enough cycles, you kind of see where they're going. But we also don't want to lose any ground that we made up in previous cycles or in phase one, right? And the way that we do that is we just maintain the non-primary focused energy systems. And so if you are somebody who felt like you really made a lot of gains, say in your low intensity steady state stuff, this cycle is going to be a little bit light on that, but don't worry that you're going to lose that, because what we do in these teams, in these training blocks, is we always put enough to maintain. So you're not necessarily going to lose anything. You're just not going to hammer those as often, the non-primary focus energy systems as often, so they might not grow, but they should never take meaningful decreases. Now, that being said, this cycle, what we're doing is we're kind of zooming in on your threshold and your tempo work, okay? So what that means is our W prime days are gone. Our low intensity steady state days are gone, but we're going to be sure to maintain those because we're still going to include one high-low day. So if you're on the teams, you just went through a high-low cycle where we hit 2 a week, we're still going to have one of those each week. If you're new to the teams and you've never done a high-low day, the high-low days consist of a longer bout, half an hour, 40 minutes, something like that, with interspersed in there, we have some 7-second full-on sprints. And so the concept is you sprint for 7 seconds, but then you assume your endurance pace. So it is test week, so your 30-minute test, that pace is kind of your baseline pace for the high-low days. And so what that allows us to do is we still touch enough of the full effort sprints to keep that primed, and then we get enough of the endurance work in between to maintain that low-intensity steady state. But we won't have any specific low intensity steady state days. We won't have any specific W prime days. Those are kind of being sacrificed so we can do the other stuff. Each week we'll also have aerobic power days. Again, yeah, you've heard me probably talk about how I think these are the most important days overall for most people. A lot of bang for our buck there. So we'll always have one of those. Again, not necessarily going to boost our aerobic power per se, but it's going to be well enough to maintain all of that, maintain all the adaptations we got from that. And so those 2 days are going to kind of be the catch-all for the days that we're missing, okay, especially if you just came off phase one. Now, the other 3 days each week, we're going to, like I said, zoom in on the tempo or the threshold days. So think about the intensities that you use during those test days. That's the intensities that we're going to be bringing here. What that looks like every week is we'll have 3 different days. As the title of the cycle implies, there will be a reprieve day, there will be a reckon day, and there will be a respite day. Each week, we're either going to start the week with a reprieve or Tuesday will be the reprieve. We alternate that with our high-low days. That reprieve day is going to be kind of like your North Star for the week. So we have our test week that we're going through, and that'll give you a broad metric of where your energy systems are. But for this training cycle, everything is going to be relative to that first day or that reprieve day. Those days are set up to be, the rest ratio will be like 1-2 or 1-3. So let's say that you're working for a minute, we're doing minute-long intervals, you'll get 2 to 3 minutes rest, okay? And these intervals should be above our threshold. So when you look at like your 10-minute test, should be a little bit faster than that. Maybe something like your tempo test, pretty high intensity, non-sustainable, but we'll have the rest intervals there. And the goal there is to really push the work for those intervals, okay? And try to use that rest to recover as much as you can. There might be a little bit of a falling off. You might find that you're actually able to hold this high threshold on these days, and that's fine. There might be a little decrease in workload though, but it shouldn't be, it's not a W prime day. It's not a come out the gates blazing and blow up, right? I say it's unsustainable because the intensity, if we were to stretch it out to like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you wouldn't be able to sustain. But for the work intervals, you should be able to sustain it pretty well. And then hope that in recovery, you're able to get what you need. Those days are going to be challenging, but doable. You should all find that you're able to come out the other side pretty all right there, a little bit burnt up just metabolically, but should be okay. The second specific day for this cycle is going to be our reckon day. Now, these reckon days are going to fill in a gap that we don't have in the regular programming. So we see our 10-minute test all the time, and then we have our 30-minute test. But that middle ground there, where it's, I'll say, long, unsustainable, right? 15 minutes, 20 minutes. This will give us an opportunity to kind of hone in that output. On these days, on these reckon days, you're trying to cover as much ground, get as many calories, whatever your metric is, in that time period. So you're trying to time it so that, let's say it's a 15-minute effort that day. You're trying to pace that so that you empty your tank at 14 minutes and 59 seconds, right? You want to try to perfectly pace it so you couldn't go any longer, but you gave optimal and maximal output during the time. There's going to be a learning curve there, okay? So the time domains you'll see kind of get recycled throughout the training cycle. But again, this is kind of a self-education for you. How hard could I push for 15 minutes? How hard could I push for 20 minutes? Last cycle, the high-low, there was some pretty direct correlation to sport, right? Especially if you played kind of these open field sports, the soccers, lacrosses, rugby, or if you are, say, in like a grappling sport where there's bursts of high output and then kind of a grind and then a burst and then a grind. The direct relationship to sport for this cycle is a little less direct, essentially. There's not many sports outside of just endurance sports that kind of operate like this. So you might not be able to draw a direct connection to your sport, but physiologically, which we'll explain here in a second, there will be some nice carryover. So anyway, those reckon days are a chance for you to reckon with your own ability. That's why the name, I'm pretty funny like that. Uh, there'll be a chance for you to reckon with your ability to put out for that time domain. Again, these days are going to be challenging, but you're kind of you're the captain of your ship here. You choose the intensity, right? And as you go through this, you should get a better idea of where exactly your capacities are. And so those first 2 days, reprieve, reckon, challenging, but doable. Respite days, I'm going to say by design, are not doable. Part of them is doable, but the whole intention of these respite days are to find your limits. Okay? The respite days are going to be the same work intervals as your reprieve days, but with less rest. So on reprieve, the rest is always going to be longer than the work. On the respite days, that's not the case. And so it's kind of failure by design, but the purpose of that is what we're trying to achieve and accomplish through this cycle, really on all 3 of these days. We're trying to deplete your glycogen stores. And so quick back pocket physiology lesson. Glucose is what carbohydrates are kind of metabolized down to. So that's blood sugar, right? Glucose is flowing through the blood. That's readily available for the tissues. When we use up all that glucose, our body then turns to glycogen, which is just stored glucose. It's stored in our muscles, stored in our liver, and our body will shuttle that out to the bloodstream for rapid energy release and absorption in the tissues. We are trying to adapt our tissues to better utilize glucose. So there will be some fiber type conversion with this type of training, which means we will convert our essentially our anaerobic, if you want to think about it like that, tissues to be a little bit more aerobic, which means it'll be able to do a little bit more with a glycogen or a glucose molecule. But what we're also going to do is signal to our body through this type of training, this glycogen depletion, that, hey, we need to get better at using our glycogen. We also need to try and find ways to store it better. So that's the stress that we're implementing. To do that, you got to burn up. You got to burn out. And so that's why these respite days are designed the way they are. Now, you're all highly motivated people, probably pretty competitive people, probably your own worst enemy when it comes to training. And so on these days, I'm telling you right now that failure is pretty much inevitable, but that's okay because I want you to shift your kind of perspective. Okay, so we're going to talk about weightlifting or strength training for a second here. If we have something prescribed in the gym, say a squat set, and it's work up to a heavy triple, right? We're going to work up to a heavy triple. We all go into those days with some kind of target in mind, right? Okay, I want to try and squat, 365. You go along, warm up, okay, feeling good. Warm up sets, feeling good. Starting to work up to the heavy triple. You get 325 on the bar, and you're like, oh, it starts to feel a little bit heavy. You get 345 on the bar, and you're able to get 3, but you're like, I got nothing else. So is that day a failure? Well, you worked up to a heavy triple that day. That was the only instruction. Did you miss your target? Yeah, you missed your target. How much did you miss it by? 20 pounds, so less than 10%. But the intention was to work up to a heavy triple, and you did it. So it's not a failure. You might be a little frustrated you didn't get as heavy of a lift as you wanted, but you still did what was asked of you. That's a pretty easy understanding for us on the strength side of things. With conditioning, people tend to lack that perspective. They think, okay, I can do this. And they don't factor in everything that's influencing their state of readiness, right? The respite days are going to come later in the week. So you're going to have a whole week of work stress, training stress, sleep, nutrition, all that stuff. So by the time you show up there, you might be a little bit fatigued, okay? You might not be able to do what you think you're going to do. You want to go into it with the intention to match the work that you did in the reprieve day. So again, that reprieve day is kind of our guiding light for the week. We're going to try and match that work. But if the wheels fall off, that's all right. The work was done. Okay. You did what you were supposed to do. You gave the effort that you were supposed to give, and the wheels fell off. When the wheels fall off, that's actually the intention, because that's essentially saying we've reached our body's limit, our body's ability to shuttle glycogen out to the bloodstream or utilize glucose or whatever. There's several physiological factors that are going to be limiting there. It doesn't really matter which one, because whatever we are limited by, we reached that limit, and that's the signal to our body that we need to adapt. So when we reach that point, try not to get too frustrated. I know when we ran this cycle previously, I didn't do a good enough job explaining that up front, and that left a lot of people frustrated. So it's going to happen, okay? And that's all right, because the work is still being done. If you had a chance to listen to the episode that David and I did on our podcast talking about conditioning, this is where you build a lot of that mental resiliency. You're going to go into this knowing that it's going to be hard. Again, this is probably the hardest cycle we put together to date. It's going to be hard. You're going to do it though. And that's the intangibles that are built from being well conditioned. Yeah, physiologically you have a great motor and all that kind of stuff, but mentally, psychologically, you're able to face a really challenging thing that's going to be extremely uncomfortable, and you still pursue it. And so that's what these days are going to bring us. Now, there's a couple strategies on these days though, when you do reach failure. One strategy, which is totally fine, when you miss an interval, you can call it a day, right? Today's just not the day. Missed it for whatever reason. Totally cool, right? We found your limit. Let's move on. If you want to, though, you can take an extra minute rest. So let's say, I think the first week we got 8 rounds of minute on, minute off. Let's say you're plugging along 1, 2, 3 day or 3 intervals, feeling good. 4th is a little dicey, and then you miss your target on the 5th interval. Add an extra minute of rest there. So instead of 1 minute, take 2 minutes after that interval, and then try to finish the set out. You might find just a little bit of an extra breather there is all you need. We can also look at this these days similar to our strength training days, where we have our true 1 rep max, but then we also have our training maxes. And so whatever your target is, you can develop a range. So let's say in 1 minute, I'm able to get 30 calories, all right? So, or on my Reprieve day, let's say I averaged 30 calories across the minutes. When I get to my Respite days, I can set up a range, a training range. So 30 calories would be ideal, but just like in strength training, our training maxes are usually 90% of our true maxes. So then I can say, okay, well, on these minute intervals, as long as I'm between 27 and 30, I'm doing all right. Okay, because there's a lot of little things that are different, right, that can change the calorie count. So setting up a 90% training max, you can think about it, is one way to go about this as well, because physiologically you'll still get the same adaptation. So those are a couple strategies to approach these Respite days. Now, other things that you're going to want to focus on this cycle. Nutrition is going to be huge here because we're depleting all your glycogen stores, which means we're emptying the tank. Do not try to do this cycle low carb. You're bound to have a really bad time, okay? We're going to be burning rocket fuel. We're burning those carbs. So you need to replenish those carbs. Typically, with this style of training, if you're relatively lean, so sub 15% body fat for men, sub 22 for women, I would say get somewhere between 4 and 6 grams of carbs per pound of body weight. It seems like a lot, right? But the reality is we are burning it down 3 days a week. You need to replenish, okay? If that seems like too much, start on the low end. Start with 4 grams per pound, okay? And then timing of those carbs will also matter. I would strongly suggest half hour or so, hour before working out, put down a decent amount of carbs. And then on the back end, when you're done working out, put down a bigger amount of carbs because that's when our body is ready to absorb them. Usually when I'm working with individuals on nutrition, I'll say something like 60 to 70% of their carbohydrates should be around their training session. So pre-workout meal, post-workout meal, and then whatever we're having during our workout. My screensaver just kicked on. Hopefully it kept recording. Anyway, we want to bookend our training with carbs, drink some carbs during training, and it should equal to about 60 to 70% of your overall carbohydrate intake for the day. How you get those carbs, I would opt for maybe low volume would be the term. So carbohydrate powders. I prefer Tailwind Nutrition. I know a couple other folks in the team use that as well. I don't get paid by them, but I just think it's a good supplement. It's a mixed carb source. Flavors are good. Some of them have caffeine in them, so I like to go with that. Gatorade's fine. If you want to go whole food route, rice, potatoes, I would go white potato over sweet potato just because it's a little bit less fibrous. Breads, I guess. Certain fruits, juicy fruits, not so bad, but if we start getting into a little bit more fibrous fruits, we probably want to avoid that, at least on the pre and during workout side. However you want to get it. If you have questions, you can drop it in Discord and we can talk about options. But we do want to have our carbs for these days. Otherwise, lean on the Discord, okay? You're going to get frustrated. That's okay. You guys, like I said, are motivated people. Air your frustrations in Discord because you'll probably find that a lot of other people are in the same place as you. And again, I'm telling you right now, if you miss on a respite day, it's not a failure. It's intentional. We're trying to stress your body beyond its limits. And to do that, we have to reach its limits. That's just the nature of conditioning. Very difficult, but it makes you better, right? We know that. On the tail end, we should see your tempo, your threshold days should really come through when you do that post-cycle test. W prime days might get there as well because W prime, that, remember, is our non-sustainable energy source. So if we're stressing non-sustainable energy levels during these intervals, we might see some benefit there. So all in all, tough cycle coming up, but I think you guys will enjoy it on the back end. Maybe not in the moment. I think you'll also gain a better appreciation for those aerobic power days. You'll see how nice those really are. But yeah, I think you guys will do great. Last time we ran this, people had great post-test performances. So just remember, we're training. Not every day is going to be our best day, but it's the accumulation of showing up, doing the work, putting out. That's what's going to get us there. Okay. Some days are going to be dogfights. Some days you're going to feel like a rock star. Take all of them in stride, right? After 12 weeks, I think you'll find that you're going to be in a really good place. And then we'll go on to the next one. So that's that. That's our Reprieve, Reckon, and Respite training preview. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you can understand the purpose. And again, I hope you guys don't get too down on yourself. If you do have a rough day, rough days happen. If you need anything, drop it in the Discord and we'll get this party started.